Have fun making your own pumpkin fruit leather from homemade pumpkin puree. Get a pumpkin that has great flavor, or a squash, like Hubbard squash, kabocha, Japanese pumpkin, cheese pumpkin, Pam pumpkin, something that you know will taste good. Roast that sucker in the oven. 350 degrees, 1.5 hours. The skin will just come right off. While your pumpkin is roasting, take your seeds, toss them in a little bit of olive oil, add some salt, maybe a little bit of garlic powder, and roast those too at the same time. It only takes 20 minutes. Puree the pumpkin in a food processor or blender to make it nice and smooth. You can let the pumpkin sit in a strainer over a bowl to get a lot of the moisture out, or you can squeeze it through a cheesecloth. I just let it sit, and I noticed that if I let it sit longer, I doubled the amount of liquid that came out of the pumpkin. Very easy. I did other tasks while I let it sit. I didn't have to push it through. I didn't have to do anything. And you want this liquid out because when you use the pumpkin in baked goods, you don't want it to be too runny. Use 3/4 cup of your homemade pumpkin puree. Add spices. I would go for a teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon ground cloves, some fresh grated nutmeg, and if you don't have the nutmeg, use ground nutmeg, maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon, and then a teaspoon of cinnamon. You could also add allspice. It's really up to you. Pumpkin spice is kind of where we're going here. After you add the spices, add your sweetener. I like to add a total of 1/2 cup of sweetener. And what I do is I use half honey and half maple syrup. That really makes the flavors a little more complex. 4 ounces of unsweetened applesauce. Then mix her up and add to your dehydrator your parchment paper or your dehydrator trays that are meant for fruit leathers. I've had my best luck dehydrating at 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 57 Celsius, for 7 hours. I've tried 8, I've tried 6. I would go for 7 hours, and I would spread it out so it's not so thin that you can see the tray, just barely opaque. So there you have it, a pretty cool recipe for making your own fruit leather out of pumpkin and pumpkin puree that you made yourself.